I feel like Craig and Mara have been changing in this story. Like, is that even allowed? Are characters allowed to change? Yeah, we all change as we get older and we learn things, right? So let's keep reading and see what keeps happening with these two. Today, we are actually going to focus more on Mara because, we've focused a lot on Greg this whole time. So let's see what our learning intention is today. We are learning to use text evidence to describe the main characters in a story. So as we're learning, Greg's not our only main character. Mara is very important in this story. So we know we are successful when we can describe the main characters and then go back in the text and find details that describe them. So like I mentioned earlier, we're really going to focus on Mara today. So I want you fourth graders to make a web like me and put Mara in the middle. Because as we read today, we're going to look for text evidence to come up with some descriptive words of Mara. So the focus question is, what do we learn about Mara from her words and her actions? And we've kind of already done one of these for Greg when we started reading, but we're going to do that for Mara today. First off, let's look at the vocabulary. What is this first word? Yeah, it is efficient. So we can see this ball is moving a lot more efficiently than the squares. Why is that ball more efficient? Then it says the student was efficient and completed all of their work in a few hours. So if you are efficient, it means you're working in a well-organized and competent way. So some suffix work today is suffixes are added to the end of words to change their meaning or what part of speech they are. We learned that shun makes a verb turn into a noun in our last lesson. So let's pause for a second. Okay, that's better. I felt like that was a lot of information. Let's look at it a piece at a time. So when you add shun to a word, some of them will not change the spelling at all. So if you get the word select and you add shun, it's just selection, right? That's the easiest way to do it. But sometimes when you add shun to a base word and it ends with te, it doesn't really work. You have to drop the e before you add the suffix. So it turns operate. You take that e off and it turns it into operation. Another thing you might run into is when you're adding a base word to a word that ends in ce, like reduce. You're going to change the e to a t. So it's going to be reduct. And then you're going to add the suffix ion, so it turns into reduction. The last one we're going to talk about is sometimes when you add shun to base word that ends with a vowel consonant e. So it might be O-R-E. You drop that E and you add an A-T before the ending. So that explore, we get rid of the E and it turns into explore-a-shun. So exploration. I know these are some weird rules, but that's why we're kind of going over it. Then if you're just stuck and it's really hard, you can use a dictionary to check or verify the spelling, because that might be tricky sometimes, or look up what the meaning of the word is. So for your foundational skill practice today, you are going to add the suffix shun to each base word. So remember those rules that we talked about. If you need a dictionary to check your spelling, you can totally use one. Then, after you change that word, use your new word in a sentence. I can't wait to see what you come up with, fourth graders. Chapter 17, Selling. Mara took 8 copies of her new comic book home from Greg's on Sunday night. She gave one to her mom, one to her dad, one to her big brother Tommy. Everyone was impressed. Mara, her mother said, "This is amazing. Of course, I always knew you had art talent, but this is a wonderful little book, like a fairy tale. And I love unicorns, don't you? I mean, of course you do, because here's the book. And who made it? You did. My Mara is an author. This is amazing." Mara thought so too. And that's why she'd autographed one copy and tucked it into the zippered pocket of her backpack. And on Monday morning, when she went to meet her friend Allison on the way to the bus stop, she gave it to her. Allison sat right down on her front steps and read it. And when Allison was, okay, so on that first page, I already learned something about Mara. Did you guys notice anything? I think it stuck out to me because I am not good at art. Miss Lawson does not like to draw, not good for me, but Mara's really good at it, and that stuck out to me. She is artistic. She is really good at all those drawings, and her mom talked about that. So another thing we learned about Mara is, what do you guys think? If we look back here, Mara thought so too. Her mom said, "You are an author, you did amazing," and Mara believed it too. So that shows us that Mara is proud of herself. She's proud of her work, and just like that, we've learned 2 things about Mara. Let's keep on going. When she was done reading, she said, "This is so good." Mara beamed and said, "Thanks." As the bus came around the corner, Mara said, "You better leave that at home. Just stick it in your mailbox or something." But Allison said, "It's okay. I won't show it to anybody. Promise." She slipped it inside the front cover of her social studies book, and then they both ran and got on the bus. Mara had watched Allison's face as she'd read the story and looked at the pictures. And sitting on the bus, she started counting kids. There were 47 students on the bus by the time they got to school. And Mara found herself thinking a little like Greg, because she felt sure that she could have sold every single boy and girl on that bus a copy of her new comic book. She could have been well on her way towards being a recognized artist and author, except it wasn't allowed. As usual, Mrs. Davenport had been very efficient. She had prepped a written version of the all-school announcement she had made on Friday. She had made it shorter, more to the point, and it was printed up in large type. And by Monday morning, a copy was hanging on every bulletin board in every hallway and every classroom at Ashworth Intermediate School. Announcement. Some of our students have been making small comic books and then bringing them to school and selling them to their friends. This is not permitted. Our town school committee has a strict policy about what may and may not be sold at school. Starting right now, these little comic books may not be brought to school, they may not be created at school, and they certainly may not be sold at school. Thank you all for your cooperation, Mrs. Davenport, Principal. Sitting in social studies, Mara stared at a copy of the announcement. She read it, then she read it again, and one sentence stood out to her. Our town school committee has a strict policy about what may and may not be sold at school. May and may not. So that meant that some things were okay to sell at school and some things were not. And the school committee got to choose. Interesting. In her mind, Mara began arguing with the school committee, imagining what she would say to those people. Because really, what was wrong with selling their comics to other kids? Nothing, or at least nothing she could see. Certainly not with her little comic book. Or Greg's either. And sitting there thinking in Miss Sanborn's class, Mara happened to look over and notice the front of Brittany's social studies book. Except she couldn't actually see the world cultures book. On the first day of school, Mrs. Sanborn had required that all the kids tape covers onto their new books. And the glossy book covers Mrs. Sanborn had handed out were loaded with pictures of high school athletes wearing Nike shoes and Nike shirts and Nike shorts and hats and warm-ups. And Mara realized that every social studies book in the classroom was trying to sell her something. And she thought, I guess the school committee decided that was okay. Then in the gym, a couple periods later, Mara saw posters about a fundraiser for new uniforms for the soccer and basketball team. So over here it tells us a fundraiser is an event where money is raised for an organization. So they weren't posters kids had made. These were large, bright, printed posters, and everyone showed beautiful, full-color pictures of M&Ms, Three Musketeer bars, and Skittles. So someone must have decided that it was okay to buy and sell candy at school. Outside during gym, Mara took a good look at the new scoreboard on the soccer field. It was all red and white, and it was trying to sell her a Coke. Next to the door on the way back inside, a big black and blue machine was trying to sell her a bottle of sports drink. And in the cafeteria at lunchtime, a long banner was selling pizza because it was Domino's Pizza Day. And over in the corner, a machine was selling frosty cans of juice. Seeing all this got Mara thinking. But then during 7th period language arts class, something happened that got Mara really excited. And when she saw Greg in the hall, right after school, she ran up, grabbed him by the arm, and blurted out, "Did Mrs. Lindahl pass out something in her language arts class today?" Greg looked at Mara as if she'd escaped from a zoo. He shook his head and Mara said, "No? Well, look what Mrs. Pelham passed out last period to every kid in the room. Here." Greg took the paper she held out. He looked at the front, flipped it over to look at the back cover, then turned a page and said, "Yeah? So what?" Mara looked at him disgusted. "So what? Don't you get it? Think about what Mrs. Davenport said about selling stuff at school, about selling comic books. Now look again." Greg looked again, and this time he got it, because what Greg held in his hand was the new flyer for the book club, a full-color, 8-page advertisement. The ad was selling books, more than 75 different titles. There were classics, and there were Newbery Award winners, but there were also Garfield and X-Men books, and Scooby-Doo cartoon books, and Calvin and Hobbes collection. There were magic trick books, drawing books, and even books that came with toys, like bobblehead, keychains, and little silver necklaces. This book club flyer was like all the other ones Greg had looked at once a month, ever since 1st grade, because once a month, the teachers handed out the flyers, and then the kids placed their orders, and then the teachers collected the money. And where did all this buying and selling happen? At school. All right, so what is the last thing we learn about Mara when she's digging deeper into all of the advertisement in the schools and she's seeing all of this stuff? What does this tell us about her? She cares about fairness. She's like, all of these other people are selling things, so what do you think she thinks should happen? Sorry, that was a lot of things. She wants it to be fair. All right, your reading response today. What does Mara notice about the book club flyer, and how does this make her feel? Guys, this is going to be huge, and I cannot wait to read the next chapter with you guys. Can't wait to see you next time. Bye.